We've all heard the claim, the United States has the highest crime rate in the world, and it's because of its open gun culture. It's a powerful statement, and on the surface, it seems to make sense. But what does the data actually say? Is America really the crime capital of the world? And what is the real story behind its unique relationship with guns and violence? The answer is far more complex and surprising than you might think. First, let's address the big question: does the US have the world's highest crime rate? The short answer is no. If you look at major international studies like the Global Peace Index, the United States is ranked 132nd out of 163 countries. That places it in the bottom third, but far from the absolute worst. The nations at the very bottom of these lists are those engulfed in major conflicts or civil unrest, like Yemen, Sudan, and Ukraine. 1. When you look at intentional homicide rates, the same pattern holds. The UN Office on Drugs and Crime reports that the Americas as a continent have the highest homicide rate, with an estimated 15 victims per 100,000 people in 2021, compared to Europe's rate of just 2.2. But a huge portion of that global violence is concentrated in just a few nations. For example, Brazil and Nigeria, which make up just 6% of the world's population, accounted for 20% of all homicides in 2021. So, the claim that the US is number one in crime isn't supported by the international data. Now, here's where the story gets interesting. While the US doesn't have the highest crime rate in the world, it is a major outlier among high-income, developed nations. An early 1980s study found that the US homicide rate was several times higher than the average for European countries. 3. More recently, a 2013 UN report found that the US homicide rate was about 6 times higher than a combined average for 4 other developed countries. 4. So, the issue isn't about being the most criminal nation globally, but rather, about being uniquely violent among its closest peers. Another common misconception is that the US is becoming a crime state, slowly, as if crime is constantly on the rise. In fact, the opposite has been true for decades. From the early 1990s, the US experienced what's often called the Great Crime Decline. The violent crime rate dropped by a staggering 52% from its peak in 1991. 5 homicides fell by 42% by the end of 1999. 6. While there was a significant spike in homicides from 2019 to 2020, preliminary data from 2023 shows a new decline, with the murder rate on pace to drop to levels not seen since 2015. This long-term trend of falling crime directly challenges the idea of a nation in continuous decay. This brings us to the core of the issue, the role of guns. While some sources, like the NRA, point out that crime rates fell even as gun ownership doubled since the 1990s, suggesting no direct link. 5. A more nuanced view is that firearms act as a force multiplier for violence. The research is clear on the lethality of guns in the US in 2023. Approximately 79% of all murders involved a firearm. 7. When a violent act occurs, it is far more likely to be fatal. A brawl that might result in a broken nose in the UK is much more likely to end in a death in the US due to the presence of a gun. 8. This is the key difference between the US and its developed peers. The US has nearly 25 times the firearm homicide rate of other high-income countries. 9. Countries with extremely strict gun laws, like Japan, which had just 6 reported gun deaths in 2014, show the correlation between gun access and lethal violence. 10. In the UK, which has a higher overall crime rate than the US due to reporting differences, expats report feeling safer from violent threats because of the scarcity of firearms. 8. So, if guns aren't the sole cause, what else is at play? Crime is a multi-layered problem. Criminologists consistently link crime to socioeconomic factors like poverty and income inequality. 12. Theories like strain theory suggest that people facing economic hardship may turn to crime to cope. 11. The great crime decline of the 90s, for instance, is attributed to a combination of factors, including the end of the crack epidemic, increased policing, and mass incarceration. 6.13. Ultimately, social problems are the drivers of criminal behavior, but the unique availability of firearms in the US is the primary determinant of how lethal that behavior becomes. In summary, America does not have the highest crime rate in the world. Its crime rate has been in a long-term decline since the 1990s. However, it is an undeniable outlier among its developed peers in one critical area: lethal violence. This isn't a simple story of guns causing all crime, but of guns acting as a force multiplier, turning other societal problems into far deadlier outcomes. It's a complex, challenging issue, and understanding it requires looking beyond simple headlines to the nuanced data.